Hello, this is Dr. Malayter, and I'm giving a recap of the IO 512 class that occurred on March 23rd. So we went through a couple of slide decks and we talked a little bit about consulting and the client projects and also the credibility of a consultant. So I'm going to walk through the first section of the consultant's role. So the main thing to remember is that as a consultant, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so that rolls into credibility. And so definitely as a consultant, you have to show that you've done your homework and that you are credible, but that you sincerely care about helping the organization. And that's really a big part of the bottom line, because consultants are hired because of their good communication skills and their care and their intelligence and their relationship with the client. So it's an ongoing thing to continually show that you care in helping them through the process. So when you meet with a client, there are some common emotions. And so this is why it's so important to build a good rapport and relationship, because you'll be working through these emotions during the initial start of the project all the way through till the end when you provide solutions, and then if you're hired on to carry out the project, there'll be a lot of different emotions going on. Sometimes there'll be different feelings of insecurity, or the company may feel threatened. There could be some personal risk, definitely impatience. Some people might feel worried or exposed or ignorant. A lot of times people are skeptical of consultants. So it's so much about how you build the relationship with the client. There are also feelings of concerned or suspicious. So along the way, there's so much of the communication skills that you as a consultant need to convey in order to build trust and to build a good working relationship. So who do you trust? So it's really important to take a look at some articles on trust and understand how people perceive trust in business relationship, and also how business relationships and how also they trust leaders. There's several qualities and things that you can do to express and start to build trust. So there's a long list of different ways behind trust. Sometimes you trust somebody because they seem to understand us and they're like us. Definitely, you are consistent in how you are operating in the consulting situation, and this way the client depends on them. You trust people when you allow them to help you see things differently. You also trust people when they don't try and force things upon you. When you're building trust and have trust, it'll help others think things through and help them ultimately make decisions on their own. In trusting situations, you want to stay calm and don't panic or get over emotional. This is really important to keep an even keel throughout the project, because the goal in a trusting consultant relationship is to help us think and separate the logic from emotion. There will probably be more emotion on the client side based on the changes coming forward than the consultant side. So to continue to build trust, you want to correct clients gently and lovingly. You want to tell the truth. You want to convey that you're in it for the long haul, that you won't leave them hanging. You want to give clients reasoning, not just conclusions. You want to give them options, give recommendations, and let them ultimately choose. Give several solutions or several pathways of how to solve the problem. At times, perhaps there's a status quo situation. The consultant might want to challenge the assumptions of the client. Again, you want to make the client feel comfortable, but take the issue seriously. So it's not about people pleasing, but it's just taking the issue seriously and making the situation and communication possible for everyone to feel comfortable. So in trustworthy client and consultant relationships, you want to act like a person and not specifically in a role. You want to convey that you're on the side, on our side or the client's side, and that you have our interests at heart. You want to do your best job to show and demonstrate your listening skills. So it's not as if you're always going to your notebook to say, here's what you said. You'll want to make sure that you will have good memory and when you're working with the client so they don't have to repeat themselves. In building trust, you want to be always honorable, and you want to trust the values of the organization and the people involved. In a trusting relationship, you want to help put the issues in context and certainly convey that not every business, that they are not the only business that has gone through this similar situation or problem before. When the tension gets high, it's important to maybe add a little humor to the situation that's appropriate. So if there's a way to kind of lighten things up, that would be a good thing also. And when you're in these trusting relationships, you'll convey that, you know, in some ways you have some certain information that they may not have. But it's not about pushing it in their face, but it's conveying that you understand their problem and have solutions. So the key point is that you want to focus on the other person. And so it's always good to consider taking some external classes about building your own communication and listening and conversational skills. So also presentation skills. So you may want to consider looking at some external sources for that for your own professional development. There are lots of inexpensive workshops around the Chicago area that you might want to consider. The Dale Carnegie Company offers mini sessions for $25, I guess a couple each month. And so they have topics from storytelling to making great presentations or understanding working with the generations. These are really low-cost opportunities to continue to build your skills, which is an ongoing process. Myself, I continue to go to professional development sessions to continue to shape my craft. And it's very important to convey trust, to build a relationship with your client, and definitely to focus on the other person. So, consulting success requires more than talent. It requires drive, initiative, commitment, involvement, and enthusiasm. So it's really about staying on top of your game. So not only are you paying attention to the certain client you're working on, you want to pay attention to what's happening out in the market. And that requires staying up to date, which I encourage people to consistently read and keep up with current business topics and articles and trends. So on how a person does this is through following specific thought leaders. You can follow thought leaders and read their articles on LinkedIn. You can also follow them on Facebook. You can also decide to follow different other colleges and universities to follow what research they're conducting. One organization I follow is the Harvard Business Review. They always have interesting articles coming across a couple actually each day, and it's great to kind of keep up and talk about the new articles that they're releasing. I also follow the Stanford Graduate School of Business, Fast Company, Forbes, and these are just a couple of the ways that I stay up to date. So people are constantly looking at their smartphones and looking at different articles that are trending. It also helps you stay in important business conversations by asking, did you see the article by Harvard Business Review about what motivates employees? Or when you're in a consulting engagement, you can say, we're formulating this solution based on some of the research that was recently conducted at Stanford. This builds your credibility, but then encourages the organizations to keep current too. We always want to stay on top and stay current and innovative. So when you're in a consulting engagement, you want to focus on what makes this client special. And you'll want to keep that at the central focus. This fits in with the appreciative inquiry, understanding what are their strengths of their organization. And based on these strengths, then you will want to go ahead and focus that and weave it into your conversations. For instance, we know Thresholds, our client project, is an employer of choice. We want to make sure that we weave that in when we talk to them with our solutions and say we want to help you maintain and retain your employer of choice in Illinois. So these are some things to consider on how you should behave. Instead of focusing on any of the negatives that we might see or difficulties that they're having, we want to focus on the positive and continue to build their strength. We need to understand where they are to help them get from point A to point B. So by understanding their strengths and some of their areas of opportunity for improvement, we can better get them to the place where they want to head. It is a step-by-step process of discovery. When we first started this class, I said the biggest skill for consultants is to listen to the background of the conversation. You want to listen to what else is going on so you can gather more information about the culture, how people behave, so when you position your solutions, they will be a fit for the organization. So what makes you special? The client has no idea what your background is. Maybe they know you have a master's degree, but they don't know the kind of work experience you have. They don't know what kind of volunteer experience you've had. And so in other kind of professional development sessions you may have been to, they don't know that. So they will need to know and understand why you're making the recommendation that you are. And that goes along with building, sharing your knowledge and building backing into your solutions. So you want to give the reasons and not just the instructions. So you are not a technician in this situation. You are a consultant, and as a professional, you are serving the client. So you want to give the best service possible and give the most amount of reasons to support your recommendations. Again, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Again, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. This is a critical point for consultants. So again, to kind of recap, this was an overview of how you're building trust and how you work with clients specifically. It's also about talking about building your credibility as a consultant and as a thought leader. You may even consider publishing on LinkedIn. Maybe you could take your white paper from the professional development class and break it apart and put together an article and publish on LinkedIn. So again, I'm reiterating to stay current and keep up to date with what is trending in business today. So we're going to move on to another slide deck. And in between, I will let you know that there are some really important models that you may want to look back at and key things that you want to take from this class. The slide decks that come from week 4, 6, and 7 have important consulting models within them and strategies that will help you continue to build your skills as a consultant. There are several models to look at in how you approach a consulting situation. It's important to have a couple of different strategies for yourself. So this next section of where we're going to follow up with the slide deck is let's talk about the client consulting project. And I'm going to walk us through the steps of the process. And it's a bit of a summary of where we've been through the semester. So first, we came into a discovery meeting. We had the initial client project request. We went ahead and reviewed the client website, and we took a look at their internet presence. We did Google searches, we looked around, and then we had an in-person meeting. We followed up and continued our discovery with some questions and answers along the way. So this was our discovery meeting kind of process. Then we started to look at the core of the problem. We had the original request, which was to create a rewards program with no cost. But as we worked through the discovery meeting and looked at other information and talked to specific employees of the organization, we had to kind of think about, or we actually had a chance to uncover some other problems. But we had to continue to stay focused that they only asked for a rewards program. So when we're looking at the core of the problem, the first thing is to decide what is the problem. So what is the core of the problem that the client sees? They see they need a new reward system. What is the core of the problem the consultant sees? Well, in a lot of situations, we learned a lot about what's challenging this organization. So we had to kind of walk through all of those different kind of situations and problems we saw. And as we looked at them, we discovered that communication was a problem because we have several sites and locations, and then we have several field employees working not at a specific location and constantly moving around. So this causes a challenge in communication. So we look at these two sets of problems, which is the need for a reward system and a problem of communication. You see it through the organizational eyes and you see it through the consulting eyes. And so the key here is to take these two sets of problems, which can help inform the solution. So we wrestled and wrestled and wrestled as a class as we kind of looked at what was going on and looked for information, and then we went back and we found out that we had some of the actual structures in the original Thresholds PowerPoint. And so with all this, as we kind of struggled back and forth, we got into action, but we had to really confirm and agree that our official problem to solve is the rewards program. So, as I said before, we could look at different consulting models, and I made reference to some consulting models in the earlier about other slide decks to look at, such as in week 4, 6, and 7. So two that I wanted to place focus upon is McKinsey's 7 S's and appreciative inquiry. Let's see if we can click through and take a look at McKinsey's. Okay, so this model was created in the 1970s, but is still very relevant today. Many people look to this model for figuring out consulting situations. So this is the 7S framework, and I have this as a link in the module section in the Canvas site, and also within this PowerPoint deck, which is also uploaded. So what are the 7 S's? The center part is the shared values. So that is one piece of the puzzle. It's the central part. It's the culture that the rest of the S's make up. So you have the style of the organization, the strategy of the organization, the skills, the systems, the structure, and staff. And what's interesting is this is what makes up the culture and how the organization works. So these are certain ways that you want to look at as you're coming into a consulting project. There are hard S's and soft S's. Some of the hard S's are structure, systems, and strategy. The soft S's are style, skills, and staff, because these are a little more unpredictable. So you can use the 7 S's when you are looking at various consulting situations. So I recommend that you hang on to this. So let's go back and look at appreciative inquiry. So this is a article on appreciative inquiry, which is where you take a positive approach to change. So the key part of this article is, where do you look for the strengths of an organization? So when you're looking at an organization, you want to look for its positive core, and here is where you will find it. You will find it in achievements, strategic opportunities, product strengths, technical assets, innovations, best business practices, positive emotions, financial assets, cooperative moments, organizational wisdom, core competencies, visions of possibilities, vital traditions and values, social capital, embedded knowledge, and business ecosystems such as suppliers, partners, competitors, and customers. So this is a way to ground a positive slant for the organization, and here's where they can be found. So another good resource and tool you will want to hang on to. So as we move forward, there are several other consulting models and different ways that you can look at an organization, but these, I think, are two vital pathways to look at organizations. So as we moved forward with the client project, we were gathering organizational data and doing analysis. We took a look at the existing data, we looked at the surveys, and we also looked at archival data. So they gave us the response to the rewards program from the survey they had conducted, and then we looked around and took a look at other things that we could access and looked at. We did get some artifacts from the organization of their rewards and ways that they had showed appreciation to their employees since we've been on the project. We had the opportunity to ask some further questions, and along the way we were establishing the roles between the client and the consultant. So when that went back and forth on how we were kind of wobble back and forth of whether we were going to, we met with them live for the first time, but then we had a little bit of a sideways turn in how we were communicating. So, maybe we may have thought we could go to some meetings, but we couldn't do that. So anyway, it was just more ways that we got to understand the organization and its data. Additionally, we did external research. So there was an article that I had sent out as an announcement, or actually it was a video from Harvard Business Review that talked about employees and how they respond to certain rewards or recognition. So it was important to kind of look at that kind of information. What are other people saying about rewards, and what does the research say about rewards programs? So this is how you build your solutions. You go back to the research and you take a look at what do successful reward systems look like? Who's doing what? And what else can we learn? So this is reviewing the external research, and the other thing is we want to go into in-depth and understanding the exact project request through the data. They give us a lot of configurations of not spending money, but then also different ways that they communicate, which can help us in developing a solution to their request. So that next we worked on generating solutions. So in this, we really had to do critical thinking of the organizational culture. So if we were to do a SWOT analysis, strengths, weakness, opportunities, threats, on the external environment, one of the threats facing this organization is funding. So that is a big focal area. So it was very important for us as we're doing the considerations to not have costs associated with our solutions. We also need to think about the culture as far as the stress with not being a little on shaky ground with the funding as we've changed with some of the political climate, as how funding is occurring for social services in the state of Illinois. So as we work through it, we've had to talk about outcomes and come up with different thoughts from the data. We've taken some time to brainstorm through solutions, and then at the point we've had to organize and prioritize solutions. So that's kind of, you brainstorm and then you decide, okay, what do we think are our top solutions for this problem? Then when it comes to, well, April 6th, we're going to have a dry run, the client presentation. So you'll be developing oral and written presentation for the client presentation. In that, you will want to determine the roles for the presentation, who's going to be speaking, and of course along the way, who's going to be doing what parts of the project. So, and we have limited it to, you will have 10 minutes of presentation time for the client presentation. And then after each group presents, there'll be a short question and answer time. So time is really important and valuable. We don't want to drown them in data, so we want to be very concise in 10 minutes and then provide them with a written documentation of the solutions that the group has come up with. So really, really important that you will want to practice the presentation beforehand. So we will have a dry run on April 6th, but you will definitely want to still continue to shape your presentation to look professional. This also includes dressing professional for the final presentation. We not only are going to have the 12 C-suite people present, but probably the dean of the campus for the Chicago school, and then Dr. Carroll, our department chair. So also within the presentation, you will be handling some questions. And so we can talk about answering questions in our next class session that we have, which will be April 6th. So I wanted to balance this upon how we've done and worked through this class. So consulting and definitely working on with a team of consultants, it's hard work. I mean, it takes time because we're new to it. You may have met each other before, but you may not have had class before, and so you have different dimensions that are coming into play. So I wanted to remind us and back it up to the whole group process, because this happens in every single situation when we get placed on a group project at work and at school, and there'll be plenty of times you'll be working on group projects in work, on consulting projects and other things that you'll do in IO. So the group process is forming, storming, norming, and performing. So even though we didn't talk about this group process before, I think you have it from organizational behavior. So in the forming part, we were connecting with the client and identifying the consulting groups. So that's how we kind of formed. Then we were in the storming phase, and this is where we were determining and understanding the problem. We were analyzing the data during this time. And it takes time. It takes some time, and we're going to wrestle back and forth. A lot of people have different ideas and think different ways about the problems, and you just are working through it. So sometimes there's conflict and frustrations. Then we move into norming, and that's deciding the roles and kind of establishing the communication boundaries. And that's when a lot of the work starts to happen. People start seeing things differently, and people start working a lot or working together better. And then in the performing stage, that's where you were building the solutions and then you'll be presenting the client solutions. So this is just normal to you know, the ebbs and flows of working on a consulting project and with any kind of group. So overall, this kind of was an overview of what was happening in our class on Thursday. And so again, to kind of state this kind of as an overview, I'm encouraging people to make sure that you go back and look at the consulting models. You will want to refer back to the slides in Module 4, 6, and 7, because there's interesting information and data that you may want to hang on to for moving forward as a consultant. We have our client project moving forward, and so next week will be an opportunity for you to work with your groups. The classroom will be available for you to meet, so some groups will be meeting at the classroom during the classroom time. We will not have an official class on March 30th. Then we will be meeting on April 6th, and we will be doing a dry run of the client presentations. And then on April 13th, we will have a start time of 3 p.m. And so we will want people to come early so we can load the slides, and this will be located in room 718. So as far as the final project, you will upload each person will upload a series of the final documents, the slide deck and final documents, into the section called Client Project. Then there is another side assignment about your own self-assessment, and you will do a self and group assessment regarding the client project. So, and then this will wrap up our class in consulting. And so if you have any questions, reach out to me, and we will connect very soon.